Welcome back to Life's Cholent. My name is Avital, and this week we are joined by a very special guest, Jenna Zadaka, who is a yoga and meditation instructor. Jenna holds workshops, seminars, and retreats in Jewish content. She teaches about Kabbalistic and Hasidic themes. Jenna also has created wonderful content on her website, breathandsoul.net, which talks about seasonal and lunar intentions. And Jenna also teaches prenatal yoga. The topic of today's discussion is Jewish meditation, the origins of Jewish meditation, what it looks like today, and how those of us who would like to get involved in Jewish meditation can take those beginning steps to do so. It is a true pleasure to have Jenna with us here today. She shares such beautiful and profound insights as to how we can truly connect with our souls and ourselves and our minds, and there's really truly something that each and every one of us can learn from her inspiring words. So welcome back to Life's Cholent. My name is Avital. Today we have a very special guest with us, Jenna Zadaka, who is a Jewish yoga instructor, and she does wonderful Jewish yoga circles, and she also focuses on meditation, and we are so excited to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
So am I. So to start off with, let's go to the general to the basic. So what is meditation in general? And then what is Jewish meditation, if there is a difference?
Sure, that's a great question. I sort of think as meditation, not as an isolated act, like some people may think of someone on a mountaintop or at a silent meditation retreat. I think of it as really meditation as life, a way of life. And I think there's hundreds of types of meditation from all sorts of lineages. But I think what really separates Judaism is not necessarily the methodology. There's lots of techniques that Jewish meditation share with other lineages and other traditions, but it's more the goal of meditation. So what is your end goal? And with Judaism, our goal is to have a relationship with our Creator and to have a deeper connection with our neshama, our soul, our godly spark. So any type of Jewish meditation that you're engaging with, there may be steps of, say, finding emptying meditation, which is not necessarily thought of as Jewish per se, but that is a step of emptying and detachment from the physical. But it's not the end goal, whereas some meditation leaders would say that is the end goal, emptying, detachment. But for us, it's how can we leave our meditation with more deeper connection to the world around us? How can we imbue our life with more connection and divine awareness? So I think that's really the foundation and the key of Jewish meditation.
Oh, that's really beautiful. Yeah, having God as the focus of, as the intended recipient of our thoughts. Mm-hmm. So how about you? How did you get involved in meditation? What's sort of your backstory and how it became something that you were passionate about and something that you went on to teach?
Sure. So it's been a long journey. I found yoga in high school, and I actually grew up in competitive sports. So I was always in competitive soccer and varsity captain and lacrosse. And my relationship to movement was always very competitive and I guess aggression and kind of hard on myself. And then in high school, when I found yoga, it was this new sort of movement practice that was actually kind to my body and to myself. And actually the focus was compassion and a harmonious connection with myself and my body. And so that's where my yoga journey started. I didn't start exploring Jewish meditation until college. I had just spent a year traveling the world. I was in Africa and Europe and really looking for meaning and authenticity. That was really my pursuit that year. And I looked everywhere except Judaism. That was something that didn't even occur to me that we had such precious gems in our own tradition. And when I got to college, thank God I met the Chabad on campus, Rabbi Mendel Matisaf. who, when after a Shabbat meal, he called out to everyone, over like 200 people, by the way, on Tuesday night, there's a Kabbalistic meditations class. And my ears perked, of course. I was like, what? I heard about meditation. I had been practicing with monks. I had explored texts in Taoism, but our own tradition having meditation, I'd never heard of such a thing. So I came back that Tuesday night expecting the same crowds as Shabbat dinner. But if anyone has been to a Chabad house, you see hundreds of people at the Shabbat dinner. They have to nudge a little bit more for the classes. So I arrived and it was just me and this rabbi, and I had never spoken face to face with a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi, let alone a rabbi with a beard, a black hat. And I had dreads, and I was like probably in a tank top and leggings, and I sat there, and within a few minutes, I was so taken by his authenticity. And he took me back to his days in yeshiva, where meditation was taught in a real practice. And we started learning Tanya, and my journey led me to Israel, where I studied in Sfat and Yerushalayim, really focusing on the internal teachings of Judaism, the inner world, the mysticism. And then another root teacher that I can attribute a lot of my knowledge, and I'm always learning from him, is Rav Dov Ber Pinson, who lives in Brooklyn. And from him, I've learned so much, and I'm continuing to learn from him. But that's really my background. And I think I started teaching yoga before I started incorporating Jewish kavanot, or Jewish intentions and Jewish mysticism in it. And that sort of happened organically as I was experiencing the transformation myself.
That's amazing. You mentioned that, you've been learning about monks and the way that other cultures and faiths have interacted with meditation and with yoga. So I'm curious, when we look at the Torah and we look at Jewish history, is meditation, or that sort of idea of spirit, is it something that Jewish people started, so to speak? Is it something that dates back to biblical times, or is it something that other cultures and faiths have sort of created and Jews have adapted to be our own?
That's interesting. And there's actually an opinion that Avraham, a few parshas ago actually, it says Avraham sent gifts to the east.
Yes.
And some teachings are that those gifts were the gifts of Eastern practices, meditation, yoga, and there's even a community called the Brahmins, and people say actually that is from Avraham.
Oh, interesting.
And we see lots of sources of Jewish meditation in our Torah. Now, I'm not an expert at other religions and other faiths and where they have picked it up from, but definitely we see in our Torah the depth of Jewish meditation.
Well, that's very interesting. When I was also thinking, you mentioned Abraham, I think also there might be an instance with Isaac where they mention that when his wife Rebecca met him, some people suggested maybe he was meditating in the field. And so I thought that was a very interesting thing, that it seems to again, perhaps date back even to biblical times. So it's not something brand new. And then there's something that was in the Mishnah that I'm going to read because I didn't memorize it, but so the Mishnah is the oral Torah, and it says, one should not stand up to pray unless he's in a reverent frame of mind. And says the original pious ones used to wait a while and then pray in order to direct their hearts towards the omnipresent. So I thought about that because essentially what it's saying is that before people would pray, they would get into the right frame of mind, and they would take the time to focus and have the right intention before they would begin to pray. So that could be one way, but what are ways that you feel like meditation might help people with their prayer experience?
Mm-hmm. That's I'm so glad you sourced that, because the Rambam says that they were actually, what were they doing for a whole hour before prayer? It's the Hasidim Rishonim, these original, very pious people. For a whole hour, they were emptying and clearing the mind, breathing and quieting the mind. And this dates back to the Second Temple times. And the Piazensker Rebbe, actually, he was the Rebbe in Warsaw, taught their exact method.
Yeah.
And we have the method today. So if you want, I'll just walk us through it. It's a simplistic way to enter into prayer with more mindfulness.
That would be great.
So it's called Tashkata, which is quieting the mind.
Okay.
And the first step of Hashkata is what's known as Habata. They sound similar. Habata is actually observing one's thoughts. And observing one's thoughts mean watching your thoughts come and go without judgment. So without attaching, this is good, this is not good, or analyzing it, but just observing with compassion, a softness, as if you're looking into someone else's mind and you're gazing, which would be pretty cool. But if you're looking into someone's mind and watching their thoughts, that's how we should approach our thoughts in this technique, with just not subjective, but just an objective, watching your thoughts come and go. And this takes a lot of practice, but it is really powerful, because after a few minutes, you'll notice that your thoughts begin to slow. And once your thoughts are, for some people, it may take a few minutes, others longer if you're new to the practice. So after your thoughts have slowed, then you introduce a focal point. And this focal point is either a word or a phrase. So personally, I like to use Bereshit bara Elohim, or you can even use an English phrase, my heart is created pure, or shalom, or a word from your siddur that really speaks to you, English or Hebrew, something that rolls off the tongue as a focal point. And again, these Hasidim in the Second Temple, they didn't just empty their mind, they emptied it so they could focus on and expand on a divine concept or word. So you start to introduce this focal point and you say it again and again. And just this audible repetition helps you ground and helps you focus while you're observing your thoughts. So as you're observing Habata, you introduce this focal point, you say the word shalom, shalom, whatever it is. And after a few minutes, you'll notice your mind is more focused, more clear. And then you can start your prayer, or you can start a thought process, say expanding on a Torah concept, or even asking yourself a question that maybe is difficult in your life, because your mind is prepared. So this is just one example of a technique that you mentioned right now. I'm so glad you brought that. But there are so many, and I think it's really up to everyone to go on this journey and find what is powerful to you and what really works for you.
That's so beautiful. I love that suggestion, because I think it's all too often in our busy lives that we go into something like prayer and our minds are sort of racing on what has to be done next, and we don't get the proper time to focus. And so I really like that idea of clearing the mind and then finding a word to focus on and bringing us into a different phase. I think that's a very beautiful suggestion. And you kind of mentioned meditating on a word or thinking about a word. So I've seen some people who will take a phrase like Hashem is with me, I shall not fear, and sort of do a repetitive saying of that phrase, or some maybe Hear O Israel, Hashem is our God, He is one, something like that. Is that something that you recommend, that people sort of take a phrase and continue to say it in a sort of in a comforting way? Is that something that might bring somebody into the right frame of mind?
Yeah, so I think what's really important to know is that everyone connects differently. And for an example, I think of three main paths of how you could go about meditation. Are you a visual learner? Just curious.
I am very visual.
Auditory.
Visual, definitely.
So I'm sure there are lots of people out there who are more of a visual learner. Mm-hmm. And that can give you a sense of how you connect. So if you're more of a visually oriented person, incorporating some visualizations into your meditation is going to be very powerful for you. And the siddur has lots of visualizations that we can use. But for an example, if you're feeling anxious, people who are more visually oriented, it might help them not to say a word over and over, but to close their eyes and visualize a calming place for them, like a beach or their grandma's house. Or a visual-oriented person may use a flame, for an example, a candle, and that can bring them into deeper godly awareness. So there are lots of different ways. If you're more of an auditory-oriented person, if you are sensitive to sound, then incorporating sound into your meditation practice is going to be key. And we can do that through nigunam, through natural sounds in nature that have healing frequencies. And really, all of Jewish prayer is connected to both the visual and the sound piece. So, and also, if you're not either of those and you're more of a body-centered, you need more somatic experience, I think I'm one of those people, then you're going to connect more through body scans or deep breathing or bringing awareness or light into places of the body. So I think the first step for everyone is to really look inwards and ask yourself, how do you connect and explore those realms?
Oh, that's very beautiful. I hadn't thought about that people who learn differently might connect to different types of meditation. That's a really cool concept. I love that. So we've talked about a little bit some of these like Jewish concepts of meditation and how it can help bring us focus. What are some of the other benefits of a regular meditation schedule, so to speak, or just doing meditation more regularly?
Mm-hmm. So I think the primary focus, like we said, is to imbue our day with more connection of the Creator and of our internal soul. But before we can do that, before we can have a deep connection with the external world, I think a big benefit is knowing your internal worlds and knowing what's going on with you. Like, what am I carrying today? What burden, what heaviness, what challenge, and what's the unbridled joy that I'm feeling today? And knowing your internal worlds and your internal landscapes is really important. So for an example, I think we have a lot of wisdom centers in the body. But if we go down, I'll just name 3 that we can really focus on. If you bring your hand to the low belly, it's actually the body part that's connected of Kislev, which is Rosh Chodesh today, by the way. Let's just acknowledge Rosh Chodesh Kislev. So the body part connected to Kislev is the belly. So if we bring our hands to the belly, this is our pre-personal center. You may have heard of a gut reaction. This is the belly brain. We have mental capacity down here that we can access. We so often live above the collarbones, right? We're in the thinking brain, the rational brain. If we drop our awareness, we find so much intuition down in the deep belly. So the belly is pre-personal. It's an intuitive center. It's like the all-knowingness, the coming home. And then if we come up to the heart is the interpersonal center. It is our intimacy center. It's where we can host other beings, other emotions. And it's why in Jewish prayer, it's the service of the heart, because from here we pour out our prayers. From here we can connect. We can create deep relationships. And we often talk, all of Judaism is about the connection between mind and heart. There are whole Hasidic sects that the only difference is how they see this mind-heart connection. So it's really important to explore these abodes of the heart. And then if we go up to the mind, the third eye center, or the da'as, this awareness, this is our mindfulness. And this is where we have our natural intelligence and our learned intelligence, and we can start to transcend up to the crown, up to Keser, and really visualize higher realms beyond our physical world. So all of this, back to your question, is we need to understand our internal universe and what's going on inside of us before we can have meaningful relationships with others and before we can connect with divinity. So that's on a spiritual level. On a physical level, there's been shown many benefits of meditation. Personally, it reduces anxiety and stress. It increases your immunity, lowers blood pressure. There's a lot of physical benefits. And emotionally, also, we walk through the world with more compassion and with a more deep knowingness of our experience and other experiences. So we can be there more for others, so we can show up in this world, so we can walk through the world with more grace.
I think that, I mean, I just met you, but I can see it in you. I can see sort of your kindness. There's been very few people who I meet who just give across like that they're at peace almost. And it's very beautiful to see it coming across in other people. So I like that. And I love what you have to say about having to understand the different parts of ourselves. How do you suggest that somebody who's just starting out, either that they come to that awareness of themselves, or what are some beginner practices of meditation that you would suggest?
Mm-hmm. So back to these 3 centers, I think the first step is allowing yourself space and time to let these centers intermingle, let them communicate with each other. Oftentimes, again, we're living above the collarbones. So give yourself time to explore these centers in your body. Let them have a dialogue. That's one step. And then because we're in Kislev, I'm just going to suggest that this is a perfect time to start meditation. I mean, we're in the dark winter months. The Hanukkah is all about stepping into the unknown, stepping into the darkness, because there's so much more abundance when we've explored these unknown territories, this space of darkness. And Hanukkah is all about the light from the darkness. So take time after lighting the menorah, sit by the flames. Don't put any expectations around yourself, what you should be thinking about, what you should be feeling. Just give yourself uninterrupted time, phone away, everything. Just carve out the space and time, sit by the menorah. Maybe if you're a visual person, you're going to look into the flames and start to notice the different colors. Start to notice the relationship between the wick and the flame, which represents our body and our soul. And if you're a more auditory person, listen to the flickering flame. And maybe if you have a partner with you, you could look into each other and see the menorah in the other person's face, the light within each other. So this is a great time to practice. If you want a more guided Jewish meditation, I would recommend Rav Dov Ber Pinson's book called, I think it's called 8 Lights, and there's a meditation for each night. So I would start there in honor of Rosh Chodesh, and there are many other starting points also. I think finding yourself a teacher, a guide that you trust, is really important.
I love that. And I love that you mentioned that. And I'll mention it now and again at the end, but on Jenna's website, which is breathandsoul.net, you can see a more in-depth explanation of her Kislev meditation and meditations for different Jewish months. So you have this meditation for Kislev, and it's for one Jewish month, but I've also seen that you have meditations or yoga practices for Shabbat, for different Jewish months, for different seasons. Why might it be, like you mentioned, that it's the dark of the winter, but what makes it important to listen to sort of the time of the year or the season, so to speak, that you would pick a different yoga or meditation practice?
I love that. And that's actually a perfect answer to your last question, because if you're looking for direction, we have the Jewish cyclical calendar that at any moment has an abundance of energy and teachings that we can connect to. So the Sefer Yetzirah brings down 12 points of light for each month. And it has a sense connected to it, an avoda, something we work on, a body part, a Hebrew letter. And all of these points of light are more prevalent in the month. And if we harness that energy, we can really connect to our potential of that month. And it's definitely shaped by the seasonal context also. But Jewish mysticism is heavily connected to the calendar, which is not circular and it's not linear, but it's cyclical. So we're always coming back to that point, but we're also going higher and higher. So we don't want to miss out on those really powerful energies. It's good to tune in. And I love to incorporate that into my meditation and into my yoga.
That's really cool. I think that those were my questions. I would like to know if there's anything else you would like to add or something I missed, because this is a new concept for me. And so you might be saying, oh, you have to talk about this. And if something comes to mind, I'd love to hear it.
I think all I'd like to say is if anyone would like more guidance and to learn more about Jewish meditation, which our tradition has so much wealth, that oftentimes we look in other places, but we have so much gems of wisdom. And I would recommend Rav Dovber Pinson's books on Jewish meditation. He has a whole series connected to visualization. There's a sound and vibration book, which has transformed how I see prayer, which really in sum, we are not praying to Hashem. We are not below praying to God, but God is flowing through us.
Beautiful.
We are praying with God. So when we're asking for, say, refuenu, like, please heal us, we're not asking God for healing. We are creating healing right now with Hashem. We are co-creators. So if you'd like to explore more Jewish meditation concepts, I'd recommend Rav Dovber's meditation series. I actually have the first book right here. It's called Breathing and Quieting the Mind. And also the Rebbe Rashab from Chabad is one of the Rebbes that really delve deep into Jewish meditation. And also find a local teacher or a local havruta or friend that you can practice with.
Those are some great suggestions. I'm definitely going to be investing in those books.
Yes.
I want to ask you while you mentioned it also, we've talked, I guess I should have asked you earlier, but you've mentioned a lot of things about Chabad and Hasidism. How does that play into meditation? What are sort of like the roots of it, and why is that sort of a branch of Judaism that has it as such a central focus?
Sure. So the Baal Shem Tov was the founder of Hasidism, and I guess 90% of his teachings, I have not studied everything he's written, or he hasn't written himself, but his students wrote his teachings down. About 90% of what he taught is Jewish meditation and prayer. So it's really a service of the heart. And that's why I talk so much about the Hasidic masters, and the Baal Shem Tov specifically brought a whole new understanding of prayer. Just one example of and then we'll end. Just one last example.
Please, as many as you like.
The Baal Shem Tov is, we often think when we're praying, we should have intentions the whole time. We should be thinking about the words and really like focusing. The Baal Shem Tov said no. When we're in prayer, we are in the words of prayer, and the words have a vibrational resonance in our bodies. You know, the world was created with Hebrew letters. The 22 letters of the alphabet are the building blocks of creation. And we know that nothing in our worlds is matter. Everything is vibrating, right? Everything has a sound because everything that vibrates has a frequency. We may not be able to hear it because our range is so small, but that doesn't mean there's not a sound. So each Hebrew letter is an energy of Hashem that is constantly being created. And Hashem constantly creates the world through divine speech. It's not like he said, let there be light, and then left. God is constantly, the 10 utterances are constantly being spoken. Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach actually would say, no, Hashem is singing the world into being at every moment. So when we're praying, we are entering the word of prayer, these vibrational, energetic letters. So on the inhale, we have the intention. So Baruch Atah Hashem, you are the source of life on the inhale. And then exhale, when we're saying Baruch Atah Hashem, we are in the word. And the Baal Shem Tov taught, that's what it means when when Hashem said, come onto the ark, boy lateva. The word for ark, teva, is the same word for word. It means come into the word. Come into the word of prayer. Leave that rational mind and just let the sounds, the vibrations of the Hebrew letters be within you. Feel the experience. So this is a radical teaching. And the Baal Shem Tov, this is a small, maybe less than 1%. He has many teachings on how to deepen your prayer. And I'll just leave it at that. But there's so many beautiful insights to explore. And I'm so happy to be here. And thank you so much for connecting.
Thank you so much. It has been a true pleasure. I've really learned a lot, and I'm sure that our listeners will as well. And you've given me a lot to open my mind to, and to get these books and to continue in my research on this. So thank you so much for being here. And anybody, again, who wants to follow Jenna and the beautiful inspiration that she shares on her website, it's breathandsoul.net. And thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you.